The sound of a 5-year-old's whispered prayer echoed through the empty church like a dagger to the heart. "Please God, I just want a dad for mommy. She cries when she thinks I'm sleeping. She works so hard and she's always tired. I don't need toys or candy, just someone to help mommy smile again." Little Emma's small hands were pressed together so tightly her knuckles turned white. Her curly hair fell around her face as she knelt in the front pew, completely unaware that someone was listening from the shadows behind her. The church was supposed to be empty at this hour, but Robert Sterling had sought refuge here after another sleepless night, another day of emptiness despite his millions. The businessman sat frozen in the back pew, his expensive suit wrinkled from hours of restless sitting. He had come here seeking answers to his own prayers, but instead found himself witness to the most heartbreaking plea he had ever heard. Emma's voice cracked as she continued, "Mommy says Daddy went to heaven when I was a baby, but maybe you could send us a new daddy? One who will love Mommy and help her carry the heavy grocery bags." Robert's throat tightened. He had lost his own wife 3 years ago, and since then his vast fortune felt like nothing more than numbers on paper. His mansion was empty, his days were hollow, and his heart had grown cold. But this child's innocent prayer stirred something deep within him that he thought had died with his beloved Sarah. Emma wiped her nose with her sleeve and stood up, her small frame looking even tinier in the enormous church. "I promise I'll be good, God. I'll eat all my vegetables and I won't ask for expensive things. Just please send someone to love Mommy. She deserves to be happy." As the little girl walked toward the exit, Robert remained hidden in the shadows, his mind racing. He watched her push open the heavy wooden doors with both hands, struggling against their weight. Outside, he could see a young woman pacing nervously on the sidewalk, clearly worried about her daughter being alone in the church. "Emma, there you are, baby. I was so worried," came a voice filled with relief and exhaustion. Robert moved closer to the window to get a better look. The woman who scooped Emma into her arms was beautiful, but he could see the weariness in her shoulders, the strain around her eyes that spoke of countless sleepless nights and endless worry. "I was just talking to God, Mommy," Emma said simply, wrapping her arms around her mother's neck. "I asked him to send you someone special." The woman's face softened with a mixture of love and sadness. "Oh, sweetheart. You don't need to worry about things like that. We're doing just fine, you and me." But Robert could see through the brave facade. He watched as the woman shifted Emma to one hip while fumbling with a handful of job application papers that had gotten crumpled in her purse. One of them fell to the ground, and as she bent to retrieve it, Robert noticed her worn-out shoes and the way she winced slightly, as if her feet hurt from standing too long. "Can we get ice cream, Mommy?" Emma asked hopefully. The woman hesitated, and Robert saw her quickly check her wallet. "Maybe next week, baby. We need to save our money for important things." Emma nodded without complaint, but Robert saw the small disappointment in her eyes. As they walked away hand in hand, he heard Emma ask, "Mommy, do you think God listens to little girls like me?" "Of course he does, sweetheart. God always listens." Robert remained in the church long after they disappeared from view, Emma's words echoing in his mind. For the first time in 3 years he felt a purpose stirring in his chest. This little girl had prayed for a father figure for her mother, and Robert found himself wondering if perhaps this was why he had been led to this empty church on this particular night. He thought about his own prayers, the countless nights he had begged God to take away his loneliness, to give his life meaning again. Maybe the answer wasn't about what he needed, but about what he could give. Maybe his wealth and his empty heart could find purpose in helping this struggling family. As Robert finally stood to leave, he made a decision that would change 3 lives forever. He would find out who this woman and her daughter were, and he would find a way to help them. Not as a charity case, but as someone who understood loneliness and loss, someone who had heard a little girl's prayer and felt called to be part of the answer. The businessman walked out of the church with more determination than he had felt in years. Behind him, the altar candles flickered in the darkness, as if heaven itself was witnessing the beginning of something beautiful. Emma's prayer had been heard, but not just by God. It had been heard by a man who desperately needed to remember how to love and be loved again. Little did Robert know that this was just the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything he thought he knew about family, love, and the power of a child's innocent faith. And little did Emma and her mother know that their lives were about to change in ways they could never have imagined. The stage was set for a story that would prove that sometimes the most powerful prayers are the ones spoken by the smallest voices, and that love has a way of finding us when we least expect it but need it most. Robert Sterling sat in his penthouse office the next morning, staring out at the city skyline while Emma's words played on repeat in his mind. The usual stack of contracts and business proposals lay untouched on his mahogany desk. For the first time in years, making money felt insignificant compared to the ache in his chest left by a little girl's prayer. He had built his fortune in real estate development, turning empty lots into thriving communities. But what good was building homes for others when his own felt like a mausoleum? The 42-year-old had everything money could buy, yet he would trade it all for one more day with his wife Sarah, or for the family they had planned to have before cancer stole their dreams. "Mr. Sterling?" His assistant knocked gently. "Your 10 a.m. appointment is here." "Cancel it," Robert said without turning around. "Cancel everything today." "Sir? Are you feeling all right?" Robert finally turned to face her. Patricia had worked for him for 8 years, and she knew him well enough to recognize when something had shifted. "Patricia, I need you to do something for me. It's going to sound strange, but I need you to find out about a woman and her daughter. They were at St. Mary's Cathedral last night around 7 p.m. Patricia raised an eyebrow but pulled out her notepad. She had learned long ago not to question Robert's requests. "What can you tell me about them?" "The little girl is about 5, African American with curly hair. Her name is Emma. The mother is young, maybe late 20s, and she was carrying job applications. They seem to be struggling financially." Robert paused, remembering the woman's worn shoes and the way she hesitated about ice cream. "I want to help them, but I need to understand their situation first." "Are you thinking of this as a charitable donation, sir?" Robert shook his head. "No, this is personal. Very personal." Patricia had never seen her boss look so determined about anything that didn't involve profit margins. "I'll make some calls. St. Mary's might have information if they're regular attendees. Be discreet. I don't want them to know I'm asking about them." After Patricia left, Robert found himself unable to focus on work. He kept thinking about Emma's prayer, about the way she had promised to be good if God would just send someone to love her mother. The innocence of it, the selflessness of a child asking for happiness for her parent rather than toys for herself, had shaken something loose in his carefully guarded heart. His phone buzzed with a text from his brother. "Still on for dinner tonight? Sarah's favorite restaurant?" Robert stared at the message. For 3 years, he and his brother had kept their weekly dinner tradition, always at the restaurant where Robert had proposed to Sarah. It had become a ritual of grief, a way to keep her memory alive. But today it felt different. Today he didn't want to sit in that restaurant and mourn what he had lost. He wanted to figure out how to help a little girl who believed in prayers and a mother who deserved to smile again. He typed back, "Rain check." Something important came up. By noon, Patricia had returned with information that made Robert's heart sink. Emma Johnson and her mother Lisa lived in a small apartment in the struggling part of downtown. Lisa worked 2 jobs cleaning offices at night and waitressing during the day while Emma attended a free daycare program. They had been attending St. Mary's for about 6 months, ever since they moved to the city. "The priest, Father Miguel, says they're wonderful people," Patricia reported. "Lisa never asks for help, but he can see they're struggling. Emma's father died in a car accident when she was just a baby, and Lisa has been raising her alone ever since. They moved here from a small town because Lisa thought there would be more job opportunities." Robert felt a familiar pang of recognition. He understood the weight of loss, the challenge of rebuilding a life after tragedy. But unlike Lisa, he had money to cushion his grief. She had to work 2 jobs just to keep a roof over their heads. "There's more," Patricia continued. "Emma's been having some behavioral issues at daycare. Not bad things, but she's been asking other kids about their daddies and telling them she's praying for one. The teachers are concerned she's becoming obsessed with the idea of finding a father figure." Robert's chest tightened. The little girl's prayer wasn't just a random wish, it was a deep need that was affecting her daily life. What about the mother? "Lisa? According to the priest, she's proud and hardworking. She's been looking for a better job, something with regular hours so she can spend more time with Emma. But without a college degree or specialized training, her options are limited." Robert made a decision that surprised even him. "I want to meet them. Naturally not arranged. Can you find out where they go, what they do on weekends?" "Sir, are you sure about this? I mean, what exactly are you planning?" Robert stood up and walked to the window again. Down below, the city bustled with life, families heading to parks, couples walking hand in hand, children laughing as they played. For 3 years he had watched this life from above, separated from it by grief and wealth. But Emma's prayer had cracked something open inside him. "I'm not sure yet," he admitted. "But I know I can't just go back to my empty life after hearing that little girl pray for her mother's happiness. Maybe this is why I'm here, why I survived when Sarah didn't. Maybe this is my purpose." Patricia nodded slowly. She had watched her boss retreat into his work after his wife's death, becoming more isolated and detached with each passing year. This was the first time she had seen him show interest in anything or anyone outside of business. "They go to Riverside Park most Saturday afternoons," she said gently. "Emma likes to feed the ducks while Lisa reads job listings on her phone." "Thank you, Patricia. And please, not a word of this to anyone." That evening, instead of dining at Sarah's favorite restaurant, Robert found himself sitting in his study, looking at a photograph of his late wife. "What would you think of all this, my love?" he whispered to the picture. "Would you want me to help them?" As if in response, a gentle breeze stirred the curtains, and for the first time in 3 years, Robert felt something that resembled peace. Sarah had always believed in helping others, in using their blessings to make a difference. Maybe this was his chance to honor her memory by opening his heart to a family that needed what he had in abundance, not just money, but love, time, and the chance to be part of something bigger than his own grief. Tomorrow he would go to Riverside Park. He would find a way to naturally meet the woman and child who had unknowingly breathed life back into his dormant heart. And maybe, just maybe, he would discover that sometimes the most powerful prayers are answered in the most unexpected ways. Saturday afternoon found Robert Sterling feeling more nervous than he had before any business deal. He had changed clothes 3 times, finally settling on jeans and a simple button-down shirt, clothing that wouldn't immediately scream "millionaire" to anyone who saw him. His usual chauffeur-driven car remained parked at home as he drove his personal vehicle to Riverside Park. The park was busy with families enjoying the warm spring weather. Robert felt awkward walking alone among the couples and children, realizing he hadn't spent time in a public park since he was a child himself. He spotted them before they saw him. Emma was crouched by the pond's edge, carefully breaking pieces of bread for the ducks, while Lisa sat on a nearby bench, scrolling through her phone with a furrowed brow. "More bread, Mommy?" Emma called out, her voice carrying across the water. "Just a little more, baby, then we need to head home," Lisa replied, not looking up from her phone. Robert approached slowly, pretending to be interested in the ducks himself. As he got closer, he could see the job listing website on Lisa's phone screen. Her expression grew more discouraged with each posting she scrolled past. "Excuse me, are these friendly ducks?" Robert asked Emma, who looked up at him with bright, curious eyes. "Oh yes. This one's my favorite," Emma said, pointing to a particularly bold mallard. "His name is Mr. Waddles because he walks funny. Do you want to feed him?" Lisa's head snapped up at the sound of her daughter talking to a stranger. "Emma, honey, come back here," she called, her voice carrying a mother's protective instinct. "It's okay," Robert said, stepping back to give them space. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to intrude. I just love watching the ducks, and your daughter seems to know them all personally." Lisa stood up, moving closer to Emma while studying Robert carefully. He could see her taking in his appearance, clean-cut, well-dressed but not flashy, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. "She does love coming here," Lisa said cautiously. "Emma, remember what we talked about regarding strangers?" "But Mommy, he likes Mr. Waddles too," Emma protested, then looked up at Robert. "What's your name, mister?" "I'm Robert," he said, crouching down to Emma's level. "And you must be Emma. I heard you calling to your mom." Emma's eyes widened. "How did you know my name?" Robert's mind raced. "I heard your mother call you Emma just now, remember?" "Oh yeah." Emma giggled. "This is my mommy, Lisa. She's the prettiest mommy in the whole world." Robert looked up at Lisa, who was blushing slightly at her daughter's declaration. "She's absolutely right," he said softly, and meant it. In the afternoon sunlight, Lisa was even more beautiful than he had realized. But more than that, there was something about her gentle strength, the way she protected Emma while still allowing her to enjoy the simple pleasure of feeding ducks. "Emma, we should really be going," Lisa said, but her tone was less wary now. "Can Robert come with us to see the playground?" Emma asked hopefully. "Oh, I don't think so, sweetheart. Robert probably has his own family to get home to." Robert's expression flickered with pain so briefly that Lisa almost missed it. "Actually, I don't," he said quietly. "I was just enjoying the park alone today." Something in his tone made Lisa pause. She recognized the sound of loneliness. She heard it in her own voice often enough. "Well, I suppose if you wanted to walk with us to the playground, that would be okay. Emma loves to show off her monkey bar skills." Emma practically bounced with excitement. "Really? Come on, Robert. I can do the whole thing without falling." As they walked across the park, Robert found himself genuinely enjoying the conversation. Emma chattered about everything from her favorite animals to her daycare friends, while Lisa occasionally interjected with gentle corrections or additions to her daughter's stories. "What do you do for work?" Lisa asked as they approached the playground equipment. I'm in real estate development, Robert said, which was true but not the whole truth. What about you? Lisa's smile faltered slightly. I work 2 jobs right now. Office cleaning at night and waitressing during the day. I'm actually looking for something better, something with more regular hours. That must be exhausting, Robert said with genuine sympathy. How do you manage with Emma? Daycare during the day and my neighbor Mrs. Rodriguez watches her at night. It's not ideal but we make it work. Lisa's voice carried a note of defensive pride. Emma's a trooper about it. Look, Mommy. Look, Robert. Emma called from the monkey bars, hanging from the first rung with determination. They both turned to watch as Emma made her way across the bars, her small face scrunched with concentration. She made it 3 rungs before dropping safely to the ground, then immediately ran back to try again. She's persistent, Robert observed with a smile. She gets that from her father, Lisa said softly, then seemed to realize what she had revealed. He passed away when she was a baby. I'm sorry, Robert said, and the sincerity in his voice made Lisa look at him more closely. Thank you. It's been just the 2 of us for a long time now. They sat on a bench watching Emma play, and Robert found himself opening up in a way he hadn't done in years. I lost my wife 3 years ago, he said quietly. I understand how hard it is to rebuild after losing someone you love. Lisa's expression softened with understanding. I'm sorry for your loss. Do you have children? No, we never had the chance. Robert's voice was heavy with old grief. We were planning to start a family when she got sick. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both lost in their own memories. Then Emma came running over, her face flushed with excitement. Did you see me, Mommy? I made it halfway across. I saw, baby. You're getting so strong. Lisa pulled Emma onto her lap, and Robert felt his heart constrict at the sight of their easy affection. Robert, do you want to push me on the swings? Emma asked hopefully. If your mom says it's okay, Robert replied, looking to Lisa for permission. Lisa nodded, and for the next hour Robert found himself doing things he had never done before, pushing a child on swings, helping her across the monkey bars, listening to her elaborate stories about her stuffed animals. Emma's laughter was infectious, and even Lisa seemed to relax, smiling more freely as she watched her daughter play. As the sun began to set, Lisa reluctantly announced it was time to go home. We have church tomorrow morning, she explained to Robert. St. Mary's? Robert asked, then caught himself. I mean, there are several churches in the area. Yes, St. Mary's. How did you know? Robert's mind raced. Lucky guess. It's a beautiful church. Emma grabbed Robert's hand as they walked back toward the parking area. Robert, will you come to the park again next Saturday? Robert looked at Lisa, who seemed to be weighing something in her mind. I suppose that would be nice, she said finally. If you wanted, that is. I would like that very much, Robert said, and meant it more than he had meant anything in years. As they reached the parking area, Robert watched Lisa strap Emma into a car seat in an older model sedan that had seen better days. Emma waved enthusiastically from the window as they drove away, calling out, Bye, Robert. See you next Saturday. Standing alone in the parking lot, Robert felt a strange mixture of emotions. For the first time in 3 years, he had spent an afternoon without thinking about his grief or his loneliness. Emma's pure joy and Lisa's quiet strength had reminded him what it felt like to be part of something warm and real. He had come to the park with a vague plan to help a struggling family, but he was beginning to realize that they might be helping him just as much. Emma's prayer for a father figure for her mother had been heard, but perhaps it was Robert who needed a family to love and protect. As he drove home to his empty mansion, Robert found himself already looking forward to next Saturday. For the first time in years, he had something to anticipate besides another week of meaningless business meetings and solitary dinners. The week following their park meeting passed slowly for Robert. He found himself distracted during business meetings, his mind wandering to Emma's laughter and Lisa's gentle smile. He had Patricia research the companies where Lisa worked, learning that she cleaned offices for a company called Metro Services and waitressed at a small diner called Rosie's. On Wednesday evening, Robert made a decision that would have seemed impossible just days before. He drove to the office building where Lisa worked her night shift, not to confront her, but to understand her world better. Through the lobby windows, he watched her methodically clean each floor, her movements efficient despite what must have been exhaustion from her day job. The sight of her working so hard while Emma was at home with a babysitter stirred something protective in Robert's chest. He made a mental note of the building's management company. Sterling Properties happened to have a significant contract with them. The next morning, Robert called a meeting with the building's management. "I've been thinking about improving our employee benefits package," he announced to the surprised property manager. "Specifically, I want to offer education grants for employees who want to pursue better career opportunities." "Sir, that's very generous, but our cleaning staff is contracted through Metro Services, not directly employed by us." "Then let's create a special program for all service workers in our buildings. Full college tuition with the condition that they maintain their current employment while studying part-time." The property manager looked confused but nodded. "If you say so, sir. How should we select candidates?" "Start with the employees who have been most reliable and hardworking. I'm sure the cleaning supervisors can recommend their best people." Robert knew this would take time to implement, but he also knew Lisa would be at the top of any list of exemplary employees. In the meantime, he had other plans. That afternoon, he visited Rosie's diner during Lisa's shift. The small restaurant was busy with the lunch crowd, and Robert watched Lisa navigate between tables with practiced efficiency. She was kind to every customer, patient with difficult orders, and somehow managed to smile despite the obvious stress of juggling multiple demands. Robert waited until she was assigned to his section, then ordered a simple sandwich and coffee. When Lisa approached his table, her eyes widened with recognition. "Robert, what are you doing here?" "I was in the neighborhood and heard this place had great coffee," he said, which was partially true. He had driven 20 minutes out of his way after researching the best diners in the area. "It's nice to see you again," Lisa said, and Robert was pleased to note that she seemed genuinely happy to see him. "How's your week been?" "Busy but better now." "How's Emma?" Lisa's face lit up the way it always did when someone asked about her daughter. "She's been talking about you all week. She's convinced Mr. Waddles was asking about you when we went to the park yesterday." Robert laughed. "Well, I hope you told him I was thinking about him too." As Lisa hurried away to tend to other customers, Robert observed the diner more closely. The owner, presumably Rosie, was an older woman who clearly cared about her employees. She checked on Lisa during the busy rush, making sure she had backup when things got hectic. The atmosphere was warm and friendly, but Robert could see that tips were modest and the work was demanding. When Lisa brought his check, Robert left a tip that was generous but not so excessive as to raise suspicion. As he prepared to leave, he overheard a conversation between Lisa and another waitress. "My car's making that noise again," Lisa was saying. "I'm praying it holds together until I can save up for repairs." "How much do you need?" the other waitress asked. "The mechanic said about $500, but I might as well wish for $5,000. Between rent and daycare, there's never anything left over." Robert felt his heart sink. $500 was pocket change to him, but it represented weeks of worry and sacrifice for Lisa. As he walked to his car, he found himself formulating a plan. The next morning, Patricia looked up from her desk as Robert entered the office with an unusual spring in his step. "Good morning, sir. You seem different lately." "Patricia, I need you to do something for me. I want you to find out where Lisa Johnson takes her car for repairs." "The woman from the park?" "Sir, what exactly are you planning?" Robert had been asking himself the same question. "I'm not sure yet. But I know I can't just stand by and watch her struggle when I have the means to help." "You realize she might not appreciate charity from a stranger?" "It won't be charity," Robert said firmly. "It will be community support. Anonymous community support." By Thursday afternoon, Patricia had located the auto repair shop Lisa used. Robert drove there personally, introducing himself to the owner as someone interested in supporting local families in need. "I'd like to set up a fund to help single mothers with car repairs," he explained. "Completely anonymous, of course. I'll provide the money, and you can simply tell them a local charity covered the cost." The shop owner, a kindly man named Frank, was immediately interested. "That's a wonderful idea. I hate turning away people who need help but can't afford it. There's a young woman named Lisa Johnson who brings her car here. She's got a 5-year-old daughter and works 2 jobs. I believe she needs about $500 worth of work done." Frank's face brightened. "Lisa, she's a sweet girl. Been bringing her car here for months, always apologizing for not being able to afford the repairs. I've been patching things up for her as best I can. When she comes in, just tell her the local business community started a fund for working mothers. No names, no strings attached." Robert left the shop feeling lighter than he had in weeks. He knew Lisa would be suspicious of such good fortune, but he hoped she would be too grateful to question it too deeply. Friday evening, Robert found himself driving past Lisa's apartment building. He hadn't planned to do anything, just wanted to see where they lived. The building was old but well maintained, with a small playground out back where Emma was playing with other children while Lisa watched from a bench. From his car, Robert could see Lisa's expression, tired but content, as she watched Emma laugh and play. It occurred to him that despite their financial struggles, Lisa had created a happy, loving environment for her daughter. Emma was confident, joyful, and secure in her mother's love. Robert realized then that his desire to help them wasn't just about money or charity. It was about being part of something beautiful that already existed, the strong, loving bond between a mother and daughter who had found joy despite their hardships. As he drove home, Robert felt a sense of purpose he hadn't experienced since Sarah's death. He was beginning to understand that Emma's prayer in the church hadn't just been about finding a father figure for her mother. It had been about finding someone who could appreciate and support the beautiful life they had already built together. Saturday couldn't come fast enough. Robert found himself counting the hours until he could see them again, until he could be part of their world for just a few more precious hours. He was beginning to realize that somewhere between hearing a little girl's prayer and watching her mother's quiet strength, he had started to hope for something he thought he'd never want again: a family to love and protect. Saturday arrived with clear skies and Robert's heart beating faster than it had in years. He arrived at Riverside Park early, bringing a small bag of premium duck food he had researched and purchased specifically for Emma. As he waited by the pond, he found himself rehearsing conversations in his head, wondering if Lisa would notice his eagerness to see them again. "Robert." Emma's voice carried across the park as she spotted him and broke into a run, Lisa following behind with a gentle smile. "Hey there, Emma. I brought some special duck food for Mr. Waddles," Robert said, crouching down to her level as she launched herself into an enthusiastic hug that caught him completely off guard. "You remembered," Emma squealed, then turned to her mother. "Mommy, Robert brought food for the ducks." He remembered about Mr. Waddles. Lisa's expression softened as she watched the easy affection between her daughter and Robert. "That was very thoughtful of you," she said, and Robert felt warmth spread through his chest at her approval. As they walked toward the pond, Emma slipped her small hand into Robert's without hesitation. The simple gesture hit him like a physical blow. When was the last time someone had reached for him with such uncomplicated trust and affection? "Guess what, Robert?" Emma said as they scattered duck food on the water. "Our car got fixed. A nice charity paid for it, and now it doesn't make scary noises anymore." Robert glanced at Lisa, who was watching the ducks with a thoughtful expression. "That's wonderful news," he said carefully. "How did that happen?" "I'm still not sure," Lisa admitted. "The mechanic said a local business fund helps single mothers with car repairs. I've never heard of such a thing, but I wasn't in a position to question it too closely." "You seem troubled by it," Robert observed. Lisa was quiet for a moment. "I am grateful, truly. But I've been taking care of Emma and myself for 5 years now. I'm not used to help appearing out of nowhere." "Maybe sometimes help comes when we need it most," Robert suggested gently. "That's what I told her," Emma chimed in. "I said maybe God sent the car angels just like I asked him to send Mommy someone special." Both adults looked at Emma, who was completely focused on the ducks, unaware of the significance of her words. Robert felt his throat tighten as he remembered her prayer in the church. "Speaking of special people," Lisa said, changing the subject, "Emma has been asking about you all week. She's been practicing her monkey bars extra hard to show you her progress." "Really?" "Well, I've been looking forward to seeing her skills all week too." As they walked to the playground, Robert noticed that Lisa seemed more relaxed than she had the previous week. The stress lines around her eyes were less pronounced, and she laughed more freely at Emma's chatter. "You look happier today," he said as they sat on the bench watching Emma play. "I am," Lisa admitted. "Having reliable transportation takes a huge weight off my shoulders. I was so worried about getting to work if the car broke down completely." "What are your dreams?" Robert asked suddenly. "Beyond just getting by day to day, what do you hope for?" Lisa looked surprised by the question. "I don't know. I've been in survival mode for so long, I'm not sure I remember how to dream." "Try," Robert encouraged gently. Lisa was quiet for a long moment, watching Emma navigate the monkey bars with increasing confidence. "I'd like to go back to school," she said finally. "I started college before I had Emma, but I never finished. I was studying to be a teacher." "What stopped you from going back?" "Time, money, childcare. The usual obstacles for single mothers." Lisa's voice carried a note of old disappointment. "I love children and I think I'd be good at it. But it seems impossible now." "Nothing's impossible," Robert said firmly. "Difficult maybe, but not impossible." Lisa turned to look at him, really look at him for the first time. You're not like most people, are you? What do you mean? Most people hear about my situation and either offer empty platitudes or change the subject. You listen like you really care about the answer. Robert felt his heart skip. I do care about the answer. I care about both of you. Something shifted in Lisa's expression, a flicker of awareness that this was becoming more than casual friendship. Robert, I should probably tell you. I'm not looking for anything complicated in my life right now. Emma has to be my priority. I understand, Robert said, though he felt a pang of disappointment. But friendship doesn't have to be complicated. Look, Mommy. Look, Robert. Emma called from the top of the climbing structure. I'm the queen of the castle. They both waved and cheered, and Robert felt a strange sense of completeness watching this little girl who had somehow worked her way into his heart in just 2 weeks. As the afternoon progressed, Robert found himself sharing more about his own life, his work, his loneliness since Sarah's death, his struggle to find meaning in his success. Lisa listened with the same genuine attention he had shown her, and he began to understand why Emma was such a caring, empathetic child. Sarah sounds like she was wonderful, Lisa said after Robert told her about his wife's passion for helping others. She was. She would have loved Emma, Robert said, surprised by how naturally the words came. She always said children were the closest thing to angels we have on earth. Emma has that effect on people. She sees the good in everyone. She gets that from her mother, Robert said quietly. Lisa blushed, and Robert felt encouraged by her reaction. Maybe there was hope for something more than friendship, even if it had to develop slowly. When it was time to leave, Emma once again extracted a promise from Robert to return the following Saturday. As they walked to the parking area, she skipped between them, holding both their hands. This is nice, she announced. Walking with both of you makes me feel like we're a real family. Lisa's step faltered slightly, and Robert squeezed Emma's hand gently. You and your mom are already a real family, sweetheart. A pretty perfect one if you ask me. Emma considered this. But families can grow, right? Like when people get married and have babies. Emma, Lisa said gently, remember what we talked about? Sometimes it's just you and me and that's okay. I know, Mommy. But I still pray for someone special to love us both. Robert's heart clenched as he remembered Emma's prayer in the church. Looking at Lisa, he saw his own emotion reflected in her eyes. They were both beginning to understand that Emma's innocent wishes were becoming more complicated as real feelings developed between the adults. I'll see you both next Saturday, Robert said as they reached Lisa's car. Actually, Lisa said, hesitating slightly, would you like to come to church with us tomorrow? I mean, if you're not busy. Robert's breath caught. I'd like that very much. We go to St. Mary's at 10 a.m., Lisa said, not noticing the way Robert's eyes widened at the mention of the church where he had first heard Emma's prayer. I know where it is, Robert said softly. As they drove away, Robert stood in the parking lot feeling as though his world had shifted on its axis. Tomorrow he would sit in the same church where Emma had prayed for a father figure for her mother, but this time he would be there as someone who was beginning to hope he might be the answer to that prayer. For the first time in 3 years, Robert Sterling was falling in love. And for the first time in Emma's young life, her prayers were being answered in ways she couldn't have imagined. Sunday morning found Robert standing outside St. Mary's Cathedral 15 minutes early, his hands sweating despite the cool morning air. He had chosen his clothes carefully, a navy suit that was nice but not ostentatious, wanting to make a good impression without drawing attention to his wealth. Robert. Emma's voice rang out as she spotted him from across the parking lot. She was wearing a bright yellow dress with small flowers, her hair carefully braided with matching ribbons. Lisa followed behind, looking elegant in a simple blue dress that brought out her eyes. You look beautiful, Robert said to Emma, then looked at Lisa. Both of you. Lisa smiled, a slight flush coloring her cheeks. Thank you. Emma insisted on wearing her special church dress because you were coming. This is my favorite dress, Emma announced, twirling to make the skirt spin. I wear it when I want God to pay extra attention to my prayers. Robert's throat tightened, remembering the last time he had heard Emma pray in this church. I'm sure God always pays attention to your prayers, sweetheart. As they entered the cathedral, Robert was struck by how different it felt with Lisa and Emma beside him. The last time he had been here, he was a broken man seeking answers in an empty church. Now he was part of a family unit, sitting in a pew with a woman he was growing to care for and a child who had already stolen his heart. During the service, Emma sat between them, occasionally whispering questions to Robert about the readings or pointing out things she found interesting. When they stood to sing, Emma's clear voice rang out with enthusiasm, and Robert found himself smiling at her unself-conscious joy. The sermon was about answered prayers and unexpected blessings, and Robert felt as though Father Miguel was speaking directly to him. When the priest spoke about being open to God's plans even when they differed from our own expectations, Robert glanced at Lisa and found her looking at him with a thoughtful expression. After the service, Father Miguel approached them in the parking lot. "Lisa, Emma, how wonderful to see you. And you must be Robert. Emma has been telling everyone about her new friend." "Father Miguel, this is Robert Sterling," Lisa said. "Robert, this is our priest, Father Miguel." "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Sterling," the priest said, shaking Robert's hand. "Emma tells me you're an expert on duck behavior." Robert laughed. "I'm learning from the best teacher." "Robert brings special duck food," Emma informed the priest seriously. "And he pushes me on the swings and he listens to all my stories." Father Miguel's eyes twinkled. "He sounds like a blessing." "He is," Emma said matter-of-factly. "I think God sent him to answer my prayers." Robert felt his cheeks burn, but when he looked at Lisa, she was smiling softly instead of looking embarrassed. "Out of the mouths of babes," Father Miguel said gently. "Sometimes the most profound truths come from the most innocent hearts." As they walked to their cars, Emma asked, "Robert, do you want to come have lunch with us? Mommy makes the best grilled cheese sandwiches in the whole world." Robert looked at Lisa, who nodded. "If you'd like to. Our apartment isn't fancy, but you're welcome to join us." "I'd love to," Robert said, and meant it more than he had meant anything in years. Lisa's apartment was small but warm and inviting. The living room doubled as Emma's play area, with books and toys organized neatly in colorful bins. The walls were decorated with Emma's artwork and photographs of the two of them together. Despite its modest size, the space felt more like home than Robert's mansion ever had. "This is my room," Emma announced, dragging Robert down the hall to show him her bedroom. The walls were painted soft pink, with a small bed covered in stuffed animals and a bookshelf filled with picture books. "It's perfect," Robert said and meant it. The room spoke of a mother's love and creativity, of making the most of limited resources to create something beautiful for her child. While Lisa prepared lunch, Robert found himself studying the photographs on the living room walls. Most were of Emma at various ages, but there were a few of Lisa with a young man Robert assumed was Emma's father. "That's my daddy," Emma said, noticing his interest. "He's in heaven now, but Mommy says he watches over us." "He was very handsome," Robert said gently. "You have his smile." "Mommy says I have his stubborn streak too," Emma giggled. Lisa appeared in the doorway, having overheard the conversation. "He was a good man," she said quietly. "He would have been a wonderful father if he'd had the chance." "Tell me about him," Robert said, settling on the couch as Emma climbed onto his lap. Lisa hesitated, then sat in the chair across from them. "We met in college. He was studying to be a teacher and I was working on my education degree. We were going to graduate together, get married, maybe teach at the same school." Her voice grew soft with memory. "He was so excited about being a father. He had already started reading parenting books when I was only a few months pregnant." "What happened?" Robert asked gently. "Car accident. A drunk driver ran a red light when I was 7 months pregnant. Michael died instantly." Lisa's voice was steady, but Robert could see the pain in her eyes. "I spent the rest of my pregnancy in the hospital, and Emma was born early. For a while, the doctors weren't sure either of us would make it." Robert felt his heart break for everything Lisa had endured. "I'm so sorry." "It was a long time ago," Lisa said, but Robert could tell it was still a source of deep pain. "I had to drop out of school to take care of Emma and deal with the medical bills. By the time I was ready to think about going back, it seemed impossible." "Is that why you don't trust easily?" Robert asked gently. Lisa looked surprised by the question. "I suppose so. When you lose someone you love without warning, it's hard to believe that good things can last." Emma, who had been listening quietly, reached up to touch Robert's face. "Are you sad, Robert?" "A little," he admitted. "I'm sad that your mommy had to go through such hard times." "But we're okay now," Emma said with the resilience of childhood. "Mommy takes good care of us and now we have you too." "Emma," Lisa said gently, "Robert is our friend. He has his own life and his own family to think about." "Actually," Robert said quietly, "I don't have a family. My wife died 3 years ago and we never had children." The admission hung in the air between them. Lisa's expression softened with understanding, while Emma looked at Robert with the serious expression she wore when processing important information. "So you're lonely like Mommy was before we met you," Emma said finally. "Emma," Lisa said, but Robert held up a hand. It's okay. Yes, Emma, I was very lonely. But I'm not anymore, not when I'm with you and your mom. Lisa and Robert looked at each other across the small living room, and Robert saw his own growing feelings reflected in her eyes. They were both people who had loved deeply and lost tragically, both trying to rebuild their lives while protecting their hearts from further pain. Lunch is ready, Lisa said softly, breaking the emotional moment. As they ate grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, the conversation turned to lighter topics. Emma entertained them with stories from daycare, and Robert found himself laughing more than he had in years. But underneath the easy conversation, there was a growing awareness between him and Lisa that their friendship was developing into something deeper. When it was time for Robert to leave, Emma hugged him tightly. Will you come to church with us again next Sunday? If your mom doesn't mind, Robert said, looking at Lisa. I'd like that, Lisa said, and Robert felt his heart soar at the warmth in her voice. As Robert drove home, he reflected on how much his life had changed in just 3 weeks. He had gone from a lonely widower going through the motions of living to a man who had something to look forward to every day. Emma's innocent prayer had indeed been answered, but not in the way any of them had expected. He was falling in love with Lisa, and he was beginning to believe she might be falling in love with him too. But more than that, he was falling in love with the idea of being part of their family, of being the father figure Emma had prayed for and the partner Lisa deserved. For the first time since Sarah's death, Robert Sterling was allowing himself to hope for a future filled with love and laughter. And it all started with a little girl's prayer in an empty church. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of happiness that Robert had never expected to feel again. Sunday church services followed by lunch at Lisa's apartment became a cherished routine. Saturday afternoons at the park with Emma filled Robert's heart with joy he had forgotten was possible. Gradually, Lisa began to trust him with more of her story, and Robert found himself sharing memories of Sarah that he had kept locked away for years. But beneath the growing happiness, Robert carried a secret that was becoming harder to bear. Every time Emma mentioned her prayers being answered, every time Lisa expressed amazement at the good fortune that had come their way, Robert felt the weight of his deception growing heavier. It wasn't just the car repair anymore. Robert had quietly arranged for several other, anonymous gifts to make their way to Lisa and Emma. A scholarship program at Emma's daycare that reduced Lisa's fees. A customer appreciation gift certificate to the grocery store where Lisa shopped. A random drawing at Rosie's Diner that resulted in Lisa winning a week's worth of paid time off. Each gift made Lisa more suspicious and Robert more guilty. He told himself he was helping people he cared about, but deep down he knew he was being dishonest with the woman he was falling in love with. The crisis came on a Tuesday evening when Robert was driving past Lisa's apartment building and saw her car in the parking lot with the hood up. Without thinking, he pulled over and approached her. "Car trouble?" he asked, trying to sound casual. Lisa looked up from under the hood, her face streaked with frustration and a smudge of oil. "It's making a weird noise again. I was hoping it was something simple I could fix myself." "Let me take a look," Robert said, though his knowledge of car engines was limited to what he had learned from watching mechanics work on his own vehicles. As he peered under the hood, Robert noticed something that made his blood run cold. There was a small card tucked into the engine compartment with Frank's Auto Repair logo on it. The card had a note: "Compliments of the local business community fund, no charge for this service call." Lisa saw him looking at the card and her expression changed. "That's strange. I didn't call for a service appointment." Robert's mind raced. "Maybe one of your neighbors called Frank's for you?" "Maybe," Lisa said, but her voice was doubtful. "Robert, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you know anything about this business community fund that keeps helping me? Because I've been asking around and no one else seems to know anything about it." Robert felt his heart sink. Lisa was intelligent and resourceful. Of course she would investigate when good fortune kept appearing in her life. "I'm not sure what you mean." "The car repair, the daycare scholarship, the grocery store gift certificate, the time off from work, it's all too convenient. Too coincidental." Lisa's voice was growing firmer. "Someone is helping me and I want to know who." "Maybe you're just having a run of good luck," Robert suggested weakly. Lisa studied his face carefully, and Robert realized she was reading his expression the way she had learned to read Emma's when her daughter was avoiding the truth about something. "Robert, I need to ask you directly. Are you the one behind these gifts?" The question hung in the air between them like a sword. Robert knew he could lie, could continue the deception, but looking into Lisa's eyes, he found he couldn't do it anymore. "Yes," he said quietly. "I'm sorry. I wanted to help, but I knew you wouldn't accept charity from me directly." Lisa's expression went through a range of emotions: surprise, understanding, and then something that looked like betrayal. How long have you been doing this? Since the first week I met you. I heard you talking about your car at the diner, and I couldn't stand the thought of you worrying about something I could easily fix. You were at the diner before we met at the park? Lisa's voice was sharp now. Robert, how did you know where I worked? Robert realized he had revealed too much. I was having lunch there and overheard you talking to another waitress. That's not true. Lisa's voice was cold now. You're lying to me. How did you really know where I worked? How did you know about Emma's prayer? Robert felt the walls closing in. What do you mean about Emma's prayer? At the park you said something about God sending someone to help. You knew about Emma asking for a father figure for me. How could you know that unless? Lisa's eyes widened with realization. You were at the church that night. You heard her praying. Robert's silence was answer enough. Oh my God, Lisa whispered. You've been manipulating us from the beginning? Following us, researching us, playing some kind of game with our lives. No, Robert said desperately. It wasn't like that. I was in the church that night because I was grieving, looking for answers. I heard Emma's prayer and it touched something in me that I thought was dead. So you decided to what? Play God? Swoop in and fix our lives because you felt sorry for us. I fell in love with you, Robert said simply. Both of you. Emma's prayer made me realize how empty my life had become, and getting to know you made me want to be part of something beautiful again. Lisa shook her head, tears beginning to form in her eyes. This is all fake. Our friendship, our relationship, it's all built on lies. My feelings for you are real, Robert said urgently. Everything I've told you about myself, about caring for you and Emma, that's all true. But you've been lying to me for weeks, making me think I was having some kind of miraculous streak of good luck when really you were just, what? Buying us? Buying our affection? It wasn't like that, Robert pleaded. I just wanted to help. I have more money than I know what to do with, and you were struggling with things I could easily fix. Money. Lisa's voice was bitter. I should have known. You're rich, aren't you? Really rich. Robert hesitated, then nodded. Yes. How rich? Does it matter? Yes, it matters. How rich, Robert? I'm a millionaire, he said quietly. Several times over. Lisa stared at him in disbelief. And you've been sitting in my tiny apartment eating my simple meals, pretending to be just a regular guy who happened to meet us at the park. I wasn't pretending about anything that mattered, Robert said desperately. I love spending time with you and Emma. I love your apartment, your cooking, your life. I love you. You love the idea of us, Lisa said, wiping tears from her eyes. You love playing the role of savior to the poor single mother and her daughter. But you don't love us enough to be honest with us. That's not true, Robert said, but even as he said it, he wondered if there was some truth to her words. Lisa stepped back from him, her whole posture changing. I need you to leave. Now. Lisa, please. Let me explain. You've explained enough. You've been lying to me since the day we met. You've been manipulating our lives, making me feel grateful for things you were secretly providing. You've made me feel like a charity case. You're not a charity case, Robert said urgently. You're the strongest, most amazing woman I've ever met. You're an incredible mother, and Emma is lucky to have you. But not lucky enough to deserve honesty from you, Lisa said coldly. Robert felt his heart breaking. Lisa, please. Give me a chance to make this right. How? How do you make this right? How do I trust anything you say now? How do I know what's real and what's just another manipulation? Robert had no answer for that. He had been so focused on helping, on being part of their lives, that he had never considered how his deception would feel to Lisa when she discovered it. I need you to stay away from us, Lisa said quietly. Don't come to church, don't come to the park, don't try to contact us. Emma is going to be heartbroken, but that's my problem to deal with. Lisa, please don't do this. Emma needs stability and honesty, not someone who sees her as part of some fantasy family he's trying to create. Lisa's voice was firm now. Goodbye, Robert. She turned and walked into her apartment building, leaving Robert standing alone in the parking lot with his heart shattered and his carefully constructed happiness crumbling around him. As he drove home to his empty mansion, Robert realized that he had gotten exactly what he deserved. He had built a relationship on lies and manipulation, and now he was losing the two people who meant everything to him. Emma's prayer had been answered, but Robert's dishonesty had destroyed any chance of a real future together. For the first time in weeks, Robert Sterling felt truly alone again. But this time it was worse than before because now he knew exactly what he had lost. The next few days passed in a haze of regret and emptiness for Robert. He threw himself into work, staying at the office until late hours and accepting every meeting request that came his way. But no amount of business could fill the void left by Lisa and Emma's absence from his life. Patricia noticed the change immediately. "Sir, you seem distracted. Is everything all right?" Robert looked up from the contract he had been staring at without reading for the past hour. "I made a mistake, Patricia. A big one." "With the Johnson family?" Robert wasn't surprised that Patricia had connected his mood to Lisa and Emma. "I lied to them. I thought I was helping, but I was really just trying to control their lives to make myself feel better." "What did you do?" Robert told Patricia everything: the anonymous gifts, the scholarship program, the way he had manipulated their circumstances while pretending to be just a friend who happened to meet them at the park. "Oh, sir," Patricia said softly. "I can see why she would feel betrayed. She thinks I see them as a charity case. That I was just playing at being part of their family." "Is that what you were doing?" The question hit Robert like a physical blow. "I don't know," he admitted. "I thought I was helping people I cared about. But maybe I was just trying to buy my way into their lives because I was too scared to risk rejection." "What are you going to do now?" "Nothing," Robert said miserably. "She asked me to stay away and I have to respect that. Emma is going to be hurt and it's my fault." But even as he said it, Robert couldn't stop thinking about Emma. She would be waiting for him at the park on Saturday, wondering why he didn't come. She would ask her mother where Robert was, and Lisa would have to find a way to explain that the man Emma had begun to think of as a father figure was no longer part of their lives. Saturday arrived gray and drizzly, matching Robert's mood perfectly. He spent the morning pacing his empty house, fighting the urge to drive to Riverside Park. By afternoon, he gave in to temptation and drove to the park, not to approach Lisa and Emma, but just to see them from a distance. They were there, Emma looking around hopefully while Lisa sat on their usual bench with a book. But Robert could see that Lisa wasn't really reading. She was watching Emma with a sad expression that made Robert's heart ache. "Where is he, Mommy?" Emma's voice carried across the park as she approached the bench. "Robert always comes on Saturday." "I don't know, sweetheart," Lisa said, pulling Emma onto her lap. "Maybe he's busy today. But he promised he would come every Saturday." "He promised?" Robert watched Lisa struggle to find words to comfort her daughter without explaining the complicated truth. Finally she said, "Sometimes grown-ups have to make hard choices, Emma. Sometimes people can't keep their promises even when they want to." "Did Robert stop being our friend?" Emma asked in a small voice. "I don't know," Lisa said honestly. "I hope not, but I just don't know." Emma was quiet for a moment, then said, "I'm going to pray extra hard for him to come back. God answered my prayer before, so maybe he'll do it again." Robert felt tears burning his eyes. He wanted nothing more than to run to them, to scoop Emma into his arms and promise her that everything would be okay. But he had forfeited that right when he chose deception over honesty. As he watched them pack up their things and leave, Robert noticed that Lisa looked as miserable as he felt. Her shoulders were slumped with exhaustion, and she moved with the same heaviness that had characterized her behavior before they met. Sunday was even worse. Robert drove to St. Mary's Cathedral but stayed in his car, watching as Lisa and Emma entered the church together. Emma kept looking around hopefully, clearly searching for Robert among the congregation. After the service, Robert saw Father Miguel approach Lisa and Emma in the parking lot. He couldn't hear their conversation, but he could see Emma's animated gestures as she explained something to the priest. Father Miguel's expression grew concerned as he listened, and he placed a comforting hand on Lisa's shoulder. That evening Robert's phone rang. The caller ID showed St. Mary's Cathedral, and Robert's heart skipped a beat. "Hello? Mr. Sterling? This is Father Miguel from St. Mary's. I was wondering if we could talk." Robert's throat felt dry. "Of course, Father. What about?" "I think you know. Could you come by the church tomorrow evening? Around 7? Robert agreed, knowing that his deception had finally caught up with him completely. Father Miguel had obviously figured out the connection between Robert's absence and Lisa's sadness. The next evening, Robert sat in the same pew where he had first heard Emma's prayer, waiting for Father Miguel to finish his evening prayers. The church felt different now, less like a sanctuary and more like a place of judgment. "Thank you for coming," Father Miguel said as he approached Robert's pew. "I wanted to talk to you about Lisa and Emma." "I'm sure Lisa told you what happened," Robert said miserably. "She told me that you had been helping them anonymously, and that she felt betrayed when she discovered it. She also told me that Emma has been asking for you constantly, and that she's struggling to explain your absence." Robert hung his head. I never meant for Emma to be hurt. But you knew she would be when your deception was discovered. The words hit Robert like a slap. I thought I was helping them. Were you? Or were you helping yourself? Robert looked up at the priest, surprised by the directness of the question. What do you mean? I mean that sometimes when we're in pain we look for ways to make ourselves feel better. Sometimes we convince ourselves that we're being generous when we're really just trying to fill a void in our own lives. I do care about them, Robert said defensively. I believe you do. But caring about someone and loving them are different things. Love requires honesty, vulnerability, and sacrifice. What you did was generous, but it wasn't love. Robert felt the truth of the priest's words like a physical blow. So what do I do now? You learn from your mistakes. You figure out what real love looks like and you decide whether you're capable of it. She asked me to stay away from them. And you should respect that. But that doesn't mean you can't work on becoming the kind of person who deserves their love. Robert sat in silence for a long moment, processing the priest's words. How do I do that? You start by being honest with yourself about your motivations. You figure out why you felt the need to control their lives instead of simply being part of them. And you learn to love without conditions or expectations. What if it's too late? What if I've lost them forever? Father Miguel's expression softened. I don't know, son. But I do know that Emma is a little girl who believes in the power of prayer, and Lisa is a woman who understands forgiveness. If you can become the man they deserve, there might still be hope. As Robert left the church that evening, he felt something he hadn't experienced in days, a small spark of hope. He had made terrible mistakes, but Father Miguel was right. He could learn from them. He could work on becoming the kind of person who was worthy of Lisa and Emma's love. But first, he had to figure out how to love them without trying to control them, how to be part of their lives without trying to fix them. And most importantly, he had to learn to be honest about his feelings and his motivations, even when it made him vulnerable. The road to redemption would be long and difficult, but for the first time since Lisa had asked him to stay away, Robert felt like it might be possible. Emma had prayed for someone to love her mother, and Robert was determined to become worthy of being the answer to that prayer. 2 weeks passed without any contact between Robert and Lisa's family. Robert used the time to do some deep soul searching, with Father Miguel's words echoing in his mind. He realized that his priest was right. He had been trying to control their lives instead of simply being part of them. During this time, Robert made some significant changes. He established a genuine scholarship fund at Emma's daycare, but this time he made it public and transparent, with an application process that any single parent could access. He also set up a community fund for car repairs through several local churches, ensuring that the program would help many families, not just Lisa. But the most important change was internal. Robert began seeing a counselor to work through his grief over Sarah's death and his fear of vulnerability in relationships. He realized that his deception had been rooted in his terror of being rejected. If Lisa had known about his wealth from the beginning, she might have been suspicious of his motives or felt intimidated by the difference in their circumstances. Meanwhile, Emma was struggling with Robert's absence. Lisa found herself explaining over and over why Robert couldn't come to the park or to church, and each conversation broke her heart a little more. Is it because I did something wrong? Emma asked one evening as Lisa tucked her into bed. No, sweetheart. You didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes grown-ups have disagreements and they need time to figure things out. But I miss him, Mommy. He was like a daddy to me. Lisa's eyes filled with tears. I know you do, baby. I miss him too. It was true. Despite her anger and hurt, Lisa missed Robert terribly. She missed his gentle humor, his patience with Emma, the way he listened to her dreams and made her feel like they were achievable. She missed the feeling of having someone to share the daily joys and challenges of raising Emma. But she also couldn't get past the feeling that their entire relationship had been built on lies. How could she trust him when he had been manipulating their lives from the very beginning? The turning point came on a Thursday evening when Emma was particularly upset about Robert's absence. Lisa had spent an hour trying to console her daughter, who had worked herself into tears missing her Robert. I'm going to pray extra hard tonight, Emma declared through her tears. I'm going to ask God to fix whatever is wrong between you and Robert. That night, Lisa lay awake thinking about Emma's prayer. She realized that her daughter had been praying not just for a father figure, but for someone to love both of them. And despite his deception, Robert had done exactly that. He had loved Emma unconditionally, and he had shown Lisa a kind of care and attention she had never experienced before. Lisa began to reconsider Robert's actions. Yes, he had been dishonest about the anonymous gifts. But every interaction they had shared, every conversation, every laugh, every moment of connection had been genuine. Robert's feelings for her and Emma were real, even if his methods had been flawed. The next morning Lisa made a decision. She called in sick to work and drove to the address she had found in the phone book under Robert Sterling's name. She wasn't prepared for what she found. Robert's house was a mansion not ostentatiously decorated, but clearly the home of someone with significant wealth. As Lisa sat in her car staring at the enormous house, she began to understand the magnitude of what Robert had given up to spend time in her small apartment, eating simple meals and playing with Emma at the park. She almost lost her nerve and drove away, but then she remembered Emma's tears and her own sleepless nights missing Robert. She walked to the front door and rang the bell. Robert answered the door in casual clothes, his hair disheveled and his eyes red-rimmed as if he hadn't been sleeping well. When he saw Lisa, his face went through a series of emotions: surprise, hope, and fear. "Lisa," he said softly. "What are you doing here?" "I came to talk," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "May I come in?" Robert stepped aside, and Lisa entered the most beautiful home she had ever seen. The foyer alone was larger than her entire apartment, with a chandelier that probably cost more than she made in a year. "I can see why you might have felt sorry for us," she said, looking around at the luxury surrounding her. "I never felt sorry for you," Robert said quickly. "I envied you." "You envied me?" Lisa's voice was incredulous. "This house is beautiful, but it's empty. Your apartment is small, but it's full of love and laughter and life. I would trade everything I own for what you and Emma have together." Lisa studied his face, looking for signs of deception. Instead, she saw only sincerity and pain. "Then why didn't you just tell me the truth from the beginning?" "Because I was scared," Robert admitted. "I was scared you would think I was just another rich guy trying to buy his way into your life. I was scared you would be intimidated by the money and not give me a chance to show you who I really am. So instead you decided to lie to me?" "I decided to try to help you in ways that wouldn't make you feel uncomfortable. I wanted to make your life easier without making you feel like you owed me anything." Lisa was quiet for a long moment. "Robert, I appreciate that you wanted to help. But don't you see how it felt when I found out? I felt like our entire relationship was fake, like you were just playing some kind of game with our lives." "I know," Robert said miserably. "I realized after you left that I wasn't really helping you. I was trying to control your circumstances so you would be happier and more receptive to being with me. It was selfish and manipulative, and I'm sorry." "Are you? Are you really sorry, or are you just sorry you got caught?" Robert looked at her directly, his eyes clear and honest. "I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I lied to you. And I'm sorry I made you feel like a charity case when you're the strongest, most independent woman I've ever met. But most of all, I'm sorry that my mistakes hurt Emma." Lisa felt her anger beginning to soften. She could see the genuine remorse in Robert's eyes, the way his voice broke when he mentioned Emma. "She's been asking for you every day," Lisa said quietly. "She doesn't understand why you stopped coming to see us." "I wanted to come," Robert said. "Every Saturday I've driven to the park just to see you both from a distance. It's been killing me to stay away, but I wanted to respect your wishes." "You've been watching us?" "Not watching," Robert said quickly. "Just making sure you were okay. Making sure Emma was okay. I know I don't have the right anymore, but I couldn't help myself." Lisa walked over to the large windows overlooking Robert's perfectly manicured backyard. The space was beautiful but sterile, like a magazine photo rather than a place where people actually lived. "Robert, can I ask you something honestly?" "Anything." "When you first heard Emma's prayer in the church, what did you think? What was your first reaction?" Robert was quiet for a moment, remembering that night. "I thought my heart was going to break. Here was this little girl asking for something so simple, just someone to love her mother and make her smile. And I was sitting there with more money than I could ever spend, completely alone and miserable. And then I thought maybe this was why I was there. Maybe this was why I survived when Sarah didn't. Maybe I was supposed to help you both. Help us or save us?" The question hung in the air between them. Robert considered it carefully before answering. "At first I thought I was supposed to save you. But I realize now that you didn't need saving. You were doing an amazing job taking care of Emma and yourself. What I really wanted was to be saved by you." Lisa turned to look at him, surprised by his honesty. "I wanted to be part of something real again," Robert continued. "I wanted to matter to someone, to have a reason to get up in the morning that wasn't just about making more money. I wanted to love and be loved, but I was too scared to risk my heart without some kind of guarantee." "So you tried to buy a guarantee?" "Yes," Robert admitted. "I thought if I could make your life easier, if I could take away your financial stress, then you might be more likely to care about me. It was manipulative and wrong." Lisa walked back over to him. Robert, I need you to understand something. I didn't fall for you because you were helping us. I fell for you because of the way you listened to Emma's stories, because you pushed her on the swings like she was the most important person in the world, because you made both of us feel valued and heard. You fell for me? Robert's voice was barely a whisper. Yes, Lisa said, tears beginning to form in her eyes. I fell for the man who sat in my tiny apartment and acted like it was a palace. I fell for the man who remembered Emma's favorite duck and brought special food just for him. I fell for the man who looked at my dreams like they were achievable instead of impossible. Then why are you here? I thought you never wanted to see me again. Because I realized that Emma was right. She prayed for someone to love both of us and you do. Your methods were wrong but your heart was in the right place. Robert stepped closer to her. Lisa, I love you. I love everything about you, your strength, your dedication to Emma, your kindness even when you're exhausted. I love the way you make a small apartment feel like home, the way you make grilled cheese sandwiches taste like the finest meal I've ever had. I love you too, Lisa whispered. But I need to know that we can build something real together, something based on honesty and trust. We can, Robert said urgently. I've been seeing a counselor to work through my issues with grief and control. I've set up public programs to help other families so this isn't just about us anymore. And I promise you no more lies, no more manipulation. If we do this, we do it honestly. What about the money? Robert, you're incredibly wealthy, and I'm a single mother working 2 jobs. How do we make that work? We figure it out together, Robert said. Maybe you'd like to go back to school to become a teacher like you always wanted. Maybe I'd like to sell this big empty house and find something more like a home. Maybe we both need to learn what it means to build a life based on love instead of fear. Lisa looked around the mansion again, then back at Robert. You would really sell this house? In a heartbeat. This isn't a home, Lisa. It's just a place where I've been hiding from life. Home is wherever you and Emma are. Lisa felt the last of her resistance crumbling. This wasn't the man who had tried to manipulate their lives, this was the man who had sat on a park bench listening to her dreams, who had pushed Emma on swings until his arms ached, who had made them both feel like they mattered. There's something else, Robert said nervously. Emma asked me to come to her school play next week before all this happened. I know I don't have the right to be there anymore, but... She's been heartbroken that you won't be there, Lisa said softly. She wrote a special part for you in her prayer that night when you first met us. She's been practicing it every day. What do you mean? She's been praying for God to bring you back to us. She believes that if she prays hard enough, you'll come home. Robert felt tears burning his eyes. Can I come home, Lisa? Can we try again, but this time with complete honesty? Lisa stepped closer to him, close enough to touch his face with her hand. Yes, she said simply. But there are conditions. Anything. No more secret gifts. No more trying to fix our lives without talking to us first. If you want to help us, you ask. If you want to support us, you discuss it with us. We make decisions together. Agreed. And you have to promise me that you're not just trying to create some fantasy family to fill the void in your life. We're real people with real problems and real needs. We're not going to be perfect. I don't want perfect, Robert said. I want real. I want you and Emma, exactly as you are. And one more thing, Lisa said, a small smile beginning to form on her lips. Emma's going to want to know why you stayed away so long. What should I tell her? The truth. That grown-ups sometimes make mistakes, but that love means working together to fix them. Robert pulled Lisa into his arms, holding her tight against his chest. I love you, he whispered into her hair. I love both of you so much. We love you too, Lisa said. Now come on, let's go home. Emma's going to be so excited when she sees you. As they drove to Lisa's apartment in Robert's car, with Lisa's older vehicle following behind, Robert felt a peace he hadn't experienced since the night he first heard Emma's prayer. He was going home not to a mansion filled with expensive things, but to a small apartment filled with love. Emma's prayer was finally being answered completely. She was getting someone to love her mother, but more than that, she was getting a father figure who would love both of them honestly and completely. And Robert was getting the family he had never dared to hope for, people who loved him not for what he could give them, but for who he truly was. Emma's reaction to seeing Robert walk through the apartment door with her mother was everything Lisa had hoped for and more. The little girl dropped her coloring book and launched herself into Robert's arms with a squeal of pure joy. Robert, you came back. I knew my prayers would work, she said, covering his face with kisses. I missed you so much, sweetheart, Robert said, his voice thick with emotion as he held her tight. I'm so sorry I stayed away. Mommy said grown-ups sometimes have to figure things out, Emma said matter-of-factly. Did you figure it out? Robert looked over Emma's head at Lisa, who was watching them with tears in her eyes. Yes, I think we did. Your mom and I love each other very much and we want to be a family together. Emma pulled back to look at him seriously. Forever and ever? Forever and ever, Robert promised. Are you going to marry Mommy? Both adults laughed at Emma's directness. Well, Robert said, that's something I need to talk to your mommy about first. I think you should, Emma announced. And I think we should have a big party with cake. Over the next few weeks, Robert proved his commitment to honesty and transparency. Instead of secretly arranging for improvements to their lives, he sat down with Lisa to discuss their future together openly. I'd like to help you go back to school, he said one evening as they sat on Lisa's small couch after Emma had gone to bed. But I want to do it the right way this time. What do you mean? I want to talk about it with you. What would it look like? How would we handle childcare for Emma? Would you want to study part-time or full-time? Where would you want to go to school? Lisa felt a warmth spread through her chest. This was so different from his previous secret manipulations. I've been thinking about that, she said. There's a program at the community college that would let me get my teaching certificate while working part-time. It would take longer, but it would be more manageable. What can I do to support that? Well, Lisa said hesitantly, childcare is expensive, and I'd have to cut my hours at work to attend classes. What if I helped with childcare costs and made up the difference in your salary? Not as a gift, but as an investment in our future together. Lisa smiled. I'd like that. But I want to pay you back when I'm working as a teacher. Deal, Robert said, sealing it with a kiss. They also talked about living arrangements. Robert's mansion was beautiful but impractical for a family with a young child. It was too big, too formal, and too isolated from the community where Emma went to school and had friends. What if we found something together? Robert suggested. Something that feels like home for all of us. They spent several weekends looking at houses in family-friendly neighborhoods. Emma delighted in having input on which houses had the best backyards for playing and which bedrooms would be perfect for a little girl who loved bright colors. The house they finally chose was a comfortable 4-bedroom colonial in a neighborhood with good schools and a park within walking distance. It had a big kitchen where they could cook together, a cozy living room perfect for family movie nights, and a backyard where Emma could play safely. It's perfect, Emma declared after their final walkthrough. It feels like a real family house. Robert's proposal came on a Saturday afternoon at Riverside Park, in the exact spot where he had first met Emma and Lisa. He had coordinated with Emma beforehand. She was his enthusiastic co-conspirator, helping him plan every detail. Mommy, look. Mr. Waddles has something shiny. Emma called out, pointing to the duck who was paddling near the shore with something tied around his neck. Lisa approached the water's edge and gasped when she saw that the something shiny was a small waterproof container tied with a ribbon. Inside was a beautiful but simple engagement ring and a note that read, "Will you marry me and make our family official?" When Lisa turned around, Robert was on one knee in the grass, with Emma standing beside him grinning from ear to ear. "Lisa," Robert said, his voice trembling with emotion, "you and Emma have given me a life I never thought I'd have again. You've taught me what it means to love selflessly, to be part of something bigger than myself. Will you marry me?" "Yes," Lisa said through happy tears. "Yes, of course I will." Emma cheered and threw herself into both of their arms, creating a group hug that felt like the most natural thing in the world. The wedding was small and intimate, held at St. Mary's Cathedral with Father Miguel officiating. Emma served as both flower girl and ring bearer, taking her responsibilities very seriously. Lisa wore a simple white dress that made her look radiant, and Robert couldn't stop smiling as he watched his bride walk down the aisle. During the ceremony, Father Miguel spoke about answered prayers and unexpected blessings. "Sometimes," he said, looking directly at Robert and Lisa, "God's plans for us are bigger and more beautiful than anything we could have imagined for ourselves." Emma had insisted on a special part in the ceremony where she could officially welcome Robert as her new daddy. Standing between her mother and Robert, she said in her clear, confident voice, "I prayed for someone to love my mommy and God sent Robert. Now I'm going to pray for us to be happy forever and ever." There wasn't a dry eye in the small congregation. Their honeymoon was a family affair, a week at Disney World where Emma experienced the magic of being a little girl with two parents who adored her. Robert had never seen such pure joy as when Emma hugged both him and Lisa after riding her first roller coaster, declaring it the best day ever. 6 months later, they were settled into their new house and their new life as a family. Lisa had started her teaching program and was excelling in her studies. Robert had scaled back his work commitments to spend more time with his family, discovering that being present for Emma's daily life was more rewarding than any business deal he had ever made. One evening, as they sat in their living room after dinner, Emma reading a book on the floor while Lisa graded papers and Robert worked on his laptop, Robert reflected on how much his life had changed. "What are you thinking about?" Lisa asked, noticing his contemplative expression. "I'm thinking about Emma's prayer that night in the church," Robert said softly. "She asked for someone to love you and make you smile. But what she really did was save my life." "How so?" "I was just existing before I met you two. Going through the motions of living without any real purpose or joy. You gave me a reason to want to be better, to want to be worthy of love." Emma looked up from her book. "Are you talking about my prayer again?" "Yes, sweetheart. I'm still amazed by how it all worked out." Emma considered this seriously. "I think God knew you needed us too, Robert. That's why he put you in the church that night. Sometimes prayers help everybody, not just the person asking." Robert and Lisa exchanged a look of wonder at their daughter's wisdom. At 6 years old, Emma had figured out something that had taken Robert months to understand: that love isn't about one person saving another, but about people finding each other when they need it most and choosing to build something beautiful together. "You know what I'm going to pray for tonight?" Emma announced. "What's that, baby?" Lisa asked. "I'm going to pray that other little kids who need daddies find them, just like I found Robert. And I'm going to pray that their mommies get as happy as you are." That night, as Robert tucked Emma into bed in her new room, she wrapped her arms around his neck and whispered, "Thank you for being my daddy, Robert. You're even better than what I asked God for." "Thank you for praying for me, sweetheart," Robert whispered back. "You saved me." As Robert and Lisa settled into their own bed that night, they talked about their plans for the future. Lisa would finish her teaching degree and hopefully get a position at Emma's elementary school. Robert was considering shifting his business focus to affordable housing development, wanting to use his resources to help other families find homes. "Do you ever regret it?" Lisa asked as they lay in the darkness. "Giving up your old life, the mansion, the freedom of being single and wealthy?" Robert pulled her closer. "Never. This is the life I was meant to have. You and Emma are my home." "I love you," Lisa whispered. "I love you too. Both of you. Forever and ever, just like Emma said." Outside their window, the neighborhood was quiet and peaceful. In her room down the hall, Emma slept soundly, dreaming of duck ponds and playgrounds and the father figure who had answered her prayers in the most beautiful way possible. Robert Sterling had entered St. Mary's Cathedral that night as a broken, lonely man seeking answers. He left it as part of a family, with a little girl who believed in the power of prayer and a woman who had taught him that the best kind of love is built on honesty, trust, and the willingness to be vulnerable. Emma's prayer had been answered, but not in the simple way she had imagined. Instead of just finding someone to love her mother, she had found someone who would love both of them completely and honestly for the rest of their lives. And Robert had found something he never knew: he was looking for a family that loved him not for what he could provide, but for who he was. In the end, it turned out that the most powerful prayers are often the ones that change everyone involved, creating something more beautiful than anyone could have imagined. And sometimes the best families are the ones that are built by choice, love, and faith rather than just by blood. The little girl who had knelt in an empty church asking God for a daddy for her mommy had gotten exactly what she prayed for and so much more. Thank you so much for reading Emma, Lisa, and Robert's story. I hope their journey touched your heart as much as it did mine while writing it. This story shows us that sometimes our prayers are answered in the most unexpected ways, and that real love requires honesty, vulnerability, and the courage to let someone into our hearts. I'd love to hear from you. What was your favorite moment in the story? Do you believe that Emma's prayer was destined to be answered, or was it just a beautiful coincidence? Have you ever experienced a time when helping someone else ended up helping you just as much? And what do you think the future holds for this sweet family? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your responses always inspire my writing and help me create stories that truly resonate with readers like you.